bear on me on Monday, but subsequently it started to subside. And for the first time, at least the security have allowed me to see my own doctors. So it were my own doctors who examined me. Before, I used to be examined by security doctors. This time I did not agree. But my own doctors came to examine me. But I'm getting better, thanks to all your prayers.
Well, the Islamic leader, the Shiite leader in Nigeria, EL ZAKZAKY, addressing the press when he was allowed to eventually, after so many protests. And of course, the Islamic movement of Nigeria has continued to protest against the continued detention of their leader, EL ZAKZAKY.
Now, in order to dispel rumors of his death, the Directorate for State Security, DSS, has allowed the leader of the Islamic movement of Nigeria, also known as the Shiite movement, to speak with journalists, just like you saw at its facility in Abuja. Now, what his followers really want is his freedom and nothing else. Absolutely. Okay, we have joining us in the studio a lawyer and human rights activist, Ahmed Abass. Good morning and good to see you.
Good morning.
Let's say Happy New Year again. It's good to have you on TVC Breakfast.
Happy New Year to Nigerians.
Well, I wonder how happy really this New Year is. EL ZAKZAKY's continued detention exposes Buhari regime to ridicule. That's according to Femi Falana, senior advocate of Nigeria, who, of course, is the lawyer to EL ZAKZAKY. Do you share the same view?
I share same view, absolutely, because in a democratic setting, rule of law must be respected, because where you do not adhere strictly to rule of law in operating or running a nation, what you simply have is the rule of men at the whims and caprices of people. That is, you simply do whatever you want to do. And that's like running. Look, the definition of a civilized society is the tenets of rule of law. In other words, there is predictability and certainty in the society. Indeed. You conduct your life
based on the outcomes you expect.
In a way to suit the objectives of the society. But when you cannot predict what can happen to you, regardless of how you conduct yourself, what you have is an animal kingdom.
Wow. It's very sad indeed. And that is what many are saying, especially bringing to mind that Sambo Dasuki is also in custody. Now, a court, Justice Kolawole ruled more than a year ago for EL ZAKZAKY to be released. The government has not honored that order. Isn't that contempt of court?
Of course. And that's a minus, a big minus for any democratic government. Because there is a constitutional obligation on all officers of state, agencies, institutions of state to obey all court orders. If you feel aggrieved, if you disagree with the judgment of a court, you have an option of appealing it until there is a valid appeal or of an existing judgment. That is the law as pronounced by the court.
And none of that has happened so far.
No.
So now the Abuja Federal High Court in December of 2016 actually indeed, ordered the release of EL ZAKZAKY. That's no longer news, and awarded him some reparation of about 50 million naira and plus temporary accommodation for the couple. Of course, he and his wife have been in detention for about 2 years now. Of course, we hear, according to reports, there are still bullets in the wife's body, lodged in her body, and it's not been removed yet. But the government is saying, we have this couple in protective custody. Make us understand exactly what protective custody is. And does government have the right?
You see, when the government says somebody is in protective custody, it simply means you are saying, I'm keeping this man away from an environment that could be a threat to him. His life is not safe in certain environment and I need to protect him. But if it is a man, if a man is saying, I want to be free, you can't hold a man against his wish. You can't say you are protecting me. Look, analogically, it's like you are cooking a meal. You are my steward. You are cooking a meal. And I see you bring 1 kilogram of salt that you want to pour into the meal. And I say, I can't take such quantity of salt. And your response is that mine is to cook, yours is to eat. Even when I know it's not in my best interest. That's exactly what the government said.
But is it not in the best interest of the society for El ZAKZAKY to continue to remain in protective custody of the government? Is it not the society that government is trying to protect and not necessarily?
Well, the government is
not necessarily
El
ZAKZAKY, but just has not been able to find a way of saying...
You just told me now that the court of law, which is the arbiter between two parties in a state, looked at the case of both parties. And the man says, I want my freedom.
In fact...
The man says, I want my freedom. And the court says, he deserves his freedom. Release him.
In fact, the judge said that there had not been any form of complaint at all in the environment where the man had been living. That
you understand? The man says, I want my freedom. The government had its own, adduced his own case before the court, and the court, that is the arbiter between parties, looked at both cases and says, the man deserves his freedom. And I hereby order you to release him. Sefini, QED. That's what the government should do.
What about the conduct of his followers in that clash? December of 2016, that happened between his men and, of course, the convoy of the Chief of Army Staff, Tukur Buratai, that led to his detention. What should we make of that clash and the way his followers conducted themselves?
We must distinguish issues. If a man conducts himself in an unlawful manner to the extent that he threatens the life, the safety of another person, there are laws. Arrest them, arraign them, prosecute them, if necessary, jail them.
And hundreds of them were already killed.
If you also allege that the man has constituted so much menace to his environment, it helps your case because you have so many witnesses that will come out on your behalf as your key witnesses to say, believe me honestly, these people, I'm not saying whether the way they've been conducting themselves is conducive or whether it should be accommodated. In any civilized society, where do you have laws? Law is for all,
especially in a democratic setting.
The orderliness of the society. So when you have people who violate your law, oil the machinery of prosecution, conduct your evidence, arrest them, take them to court, prosecute them diligently and intelligently.
All right, let's analyze the statement of El ZAKZAKY when he addressed the pressmen. In fact, at the beginning of the interview, when journalists asked him, can we ask you a question, he said, if they allow me, if you recall. And then, yes, he talked about them, DSS eventually allowing him see his doctors and be attended to by his personal doctors, meaning that if you're saying someone is in voluntary custody, according to Garba Shehu, that in fact is in the company of his wife and children, then it means that he has some rights that will be given to him. But so far, from what we heard, that he eventually allowed his doctors to see him, it means that the man is not even comfortable wherever he's placed.
Can I tell you the greatest undoing of the managers of information of this government? Their greatest undoing is that they do not know how to intelligently communicate with the public. And they are doing great disservice to the government. You rightly said it. You said somebody is in protective custody. You are protecting me for my own safety. Yet I do not have the liberty to see my personal doctor. You impose a doctor on me. The information is out there. That's what he told the entire public. Indeed. For anybody that's insane, when you analyze what he has just said, it simply means the man is being incarcerated against his will.
Of course, I mean, anyone who is incarcerated, it would be against their will, whether they have committed some offense or not. But let's look at it this way. Let's even backtrack a bit to how government responded to the Boko Haram threat initially when it just started. Yes. Imagine a situation where government did not go out of its way to, curtail the freedom of El ZAKZAKY. And Nigeria right now is facing so many problems, challenges on almost every front, especially security. And the El ZAKZAKY, that's the IMN, Islamic Movement of Nigeria, have over the years constituted themselves as not just a nuisance, but a menace to society, leading to the deaths of so many Nigerians. I'm just saying. Is it not possible that the same Nigerians would complain that, look, government should have done something much earlier to nip this in the bud so that it doesn't get out of hand? And now here we are, IMN is a terror to society.
You know, as a lawyer, I will pray you never fall victim of impunity.
Okay.
I'm telling you,
I say big amen to that.
Look, if you are,
and that's not to say that one has not expressed it one way or another.
Look, that's why I'm saying there are laws in the land. Rule of law, defining offenses. What the state should do, once a man is alleged to have committed an offense, gather your evidence, take him to court, prosecute him intelligently and diligently. If he's found guilty, convict him.
So now that the government has not...
send him to prison. But detaining a man indefinitely...
Yeah, that you don't have proof, enough proof to...
Detaining a man indefinitely is what we are saying. If the government has a case, let them prosecute him, send him to... Look, if you say a man constitutes security threat, I'm saying because the law is meant for everybody. It's meant for everybody. And like I said, nobody wants to fall victim of impunity. Even if his followers have committed any offense, I'm not saying absolve anybody. That's why the scale of justice is blind.
Exactly. Now,
blind. If you commit an offense, regardless of your status, regardless of your religion, regardless of your tribe, you will be penalized. Penalize all offenders.
Now let's see what this portends really, especially to the common Nigerian, because we hear every day in the country that the court is the last hope of the common man. The judiciary, like you said, is blind, so it's very balanced. It's supposed to be balanced. And then a judge gave an order. It's not respected by the executive of the country, meaning that Nigerians are not safe. Anybody can be arrested anytime without...
That's why I'm saying that if you are ever a victim of impunity, you won't find it palatable. You won't find it palatable because you will seem so helpless and so vulnerable. And what it does is that it makes you to lose faith in the system. Because the same system that is supposed to protect you and protect your right is the same system that is violating and trampling those rights. So where do you run to?
And when you lose faith in the system, what then? So what are the options left for not only El ZAKZAKY, because this government some would say has become unpopular because of such impunity on the part of government, the issue of Dasuki and the rest of them. What are the options left for the IMN in pursuant of the freedom of El ZAKZAKY?
They must keep using the legal system. The handlers of...
They used it.
Yes.
It hasn't worked.
It hasn't
but there are layers.
That's why they're protesting.
But there are layers. There are layers.
About to sit out.
No, there are layers. There are layers. Okay. You go to the High Court. The High Court gives a judgment, and the court is not. What do you call it? The court is not. The government is not obeying the court. The Court of Appeal is there.
Will the government that has not obeyed the initial order of the lower court,
that is the only most civilized thing you must continually do. Otherwise, the other alternative is to do what? To resort to self-help.
In other words, hope.
Yes. You must, yes. And that's why people must constantly speak out. When the government does what is good, you give them a standing ovation. And when they also err, we must be courageous enough to look at them and say, look, we want a better society. For those clamoring and constantly shouting for, for a better society, it's not that as if they are enemies of the state. It augurs well for everybody when you know that everybody has a stake, everybody can be protected within the system.
But some would argue with you that governance is not necessarily a popularity contest, where sometimes governments are constrained to take certain decisions that may not be popular with the generality of the public, including civil society. But eventually, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, you now say, look, that was actually a good decision on the part of government.
Then do away with your rule of law and elect people and just tell them, say, use your discretion to govern. That's exactly what those arguing for. Why do you have it? Is to ensure that officers and institutions operate within defined rules and regulations of engagement.
But can government prevent the breakdown? Prevent is the underlying word. Prevent before it happens.
When
does government have the right to prevent a breakdown of law and order?
Why not?
Okay. So how does government go about it without infringing on people's rights?
Oh, let's see. You can't incarcerate me indefinitely simply because you think I'm fair in complexion or that I look somehow. If you have suspicion that this man is likely, you must be acting on certain information. And you must investigate, conduct your investigation, and take it to a logical conclusion. If evidences emerge to indicate they were acts, those are sufficient evidence for you to say, I was planning to commit this and this offense. And in fact,
you have to go back to the court.
You will go back to court
to
say,
go back to the
look,
court.
You have murder, you have attempted murder.
Yes.
Attempted murder means somebody is planning to commit murder. He hasn't committed the murder. And there are evidences. And the law allows the state to charge a man for attempted murder because there are evidence to establish that. Whether you commit an offense or you are planning to commit an offense, the government has the machinery to investigate.
Indeed.
And there are laws covering most of these offenses.
Okay.
And what a civilized government will do is to gather its evidence, take you to court, because the court is the only person or the only institution that can say, yes, you were about to commit this offense. I hereby find you guilty and I'm sentencing you to 6 months imprisonment.
Yes.
And that ends the function of the executive.
Reading the court judgment ordering the release of EL ZAKZAKY and then reading some of the analysis of some lawyers in the country and why the Attorney General of the Federation somehow quietly didn't appeal the bill. We're made to understand that a man's liberty is sacrosanct. Human right, of course, cannot be tampered with. And once a court orders freedom of someone held in custody, that it cannot apply for stay of execution on that, because a man's right is very important. Clarify that for us, because I'm trying to...
He said
it cannot apply for a stay of execution on bill already approved by a judge.
No. That's not correct.
Does Section 35?
Does
Section 35 of the Constitution actually make that provision? Does it allow for that?
Within the legal system,
yes,
there's an appeal mechanism. There is no law that says a party must agree with the judgment of the court of first instance. There's no law that says once a high court delivers a judgment that I cannot appeal it. There's no law. Okay. That's why we have the court. It's an appellate system. We are running an appellate system.
I want you to clarify.
The high court is a court of first instance. It's a court of first instance. That is, there are cases that you must initiate from the high court. It's a court of first instance. It is not the final arbiter.
Okay.
So once the court of first instance gives its judgment, any of the party can disagree with that judgment and adopt a civil approach by approaching the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal is an appellate court to the High Court. It's not a final court.
Yes.
In that case, if the Court of Appeal also gives its judgment, any of the party
Ahmed,
can also disagree and approach the Supreme Court.
The clarification now, the clarification is the period of the court has ruled. And so the period of appealing to the higher court.
Okay.
Stay of execution, of judgment rather, will the judgment hold? Should the accused be released at that point until the appeal case is heard in the higher court, or the stay of execution stays back in custody until the higher court, rules?
Come again. Let me understand.
Let
me understand.
Okay, in the interim.
The High Court, in the interim, the High Court rules, release this accused, let him go, release him, his freedom is granted. And then the prosecution appeals that judgment that we don't want this person released. You appeal to a higher court. So that space of the case being heard in the higher court, should the accused be released at that point? After all, the running judgment at that time is that the person is free.
No, but once there is a valid in the appeal mechanism, once an appeal has been entered at the higher court before probably the release of the person, because you see, most times lawyers anticipate the outcome, and sometimes processes are even prepared down before the court gives its judgment. And once the court gives its judgment, the process of even releasing the person, because it's not as if immediately they say release, that's it. There are some administrative procedure you must also go to. Immediately, same day sometimes in some cases, the dissenting party will file its appeal immediately. Within some few hours, some few days, the lower court is already served with the notice that an appeal is subsisting
well, if they didn't
already.
If they didn't anticipate the judgment, if they didn't anticipate the judgment that was going to swing the other way, that wasn't going to favor them, and
what happens then?
An appeal was not prepared. What exactly?
Yes, ordinarily the person should be released.
All right.
Should be released. Ordinarily.
Okay.
Ordinarily.
So.
But sometimes administrative twisting, you know, because once the court says, the person is in the custody of the executive, and the court has made its order, release, and the court, unfortunately, as it is today, does not have an enforcement arm.
So which leads me to ask the question then, is there more to this than meets the eye?
You see,
or is it just a case of we just want to ensure the public good, public order?
You can have good intention that, look, if we do not do anything, this may degenerate into its more serious social problems and not the rest of them. But like I said, we do not run, we run a system that is predicated on rule of law, not the rule of your wish or your thought. Not the, it's not, you do not have any discretion here to say, you see, I think this man is going to constitute a threat. You must locate it within the precinct of existing law.
Now, in the case of a government,
as
in this case, if government has information or evidence or evidences that it does not want to put out there, and it is using such evidence or information or intelligence, classified information, thank you, and it's using that to actually continue to hold on to, this gentleman and his family in protective custody.
That's a very dangerous system. What you are running is what I call a voodoo system.
Okay.
It's a voodoo system. If you have any evidence against a Nigerian, you owe the public an obligation. You can't label me a criminal, and you say you have evidence against me that I'm a criminal, and you are not willing to oblige the public those evidence. You are destroying my reputation. Anybody who does not like me, probably for what I stand for ideologically, can also cook up a story and say we have evidence against this man.
And that is why
for societal sanity, for societal morality, if you have an issue, evidence against any Nigerian, it is mandatory that you bring such evidence, because it will help us to understand why you are taking certain action.
What is the role of the Attorney General in all of this and the different legal luminaries that are within this government? The Vice President himself is a senior advocate of Nigeria. You have other ministers who are lawyers. Is it that they're not advising government on the need to obey the laws of the land? Or what exactly is going on?
Government sometimes can be very complex when you have different people with different ideological, leanings, trying to interpret an issue and all the rest of them. Most times, I think we just need a transparent government, a government that has nothing to hide, a government that is committed to the welfare of Nigerians. Be courageous. Sometimes, even when you err, also admit that when you have erred, yes, and render apology to those Nigerians.
And that's why Shiites are protesting anyway, that they are being witch hunted, because they are just a small fraction of the Muslim population in Nigeria, while Sunnis are many in the country. Thank you for your analysis.
Violence, the government has a right.
Thank you for your analysis at this time. Ahmed Abass, you're a rights activist. Thank you for calling as usual.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Of course, still a whole lot more to, well, not a whole lot more, but one more to discuss on the show right now. Just stay with us.